Hi, my name is Kiran Keswani. I'm an architect and urban designer based in Bangalore. Uh, I am also co-founder of Everyday City Lab. It is an urban lab that I started way back in 2018 after 20 years of an architectural and urban design practice. At the Everyday City Lab, we focus on design, research, and teaching on public spaces. And in the Indian context, we believe that the street is the predominant public space, since here we have few designated public spaces, as one might find in the West. So therefore, at the lab, our primary concern is with how people behave, move, and act on streets as well as in small informal public spaces. I would like to share here some research that we have been doing on tree shrine spaces in Bangalore. These are neighborhood community spaces. And while we've been working on this for almost 10 years now, from 2015 onwards, uh, today I'd like to share how we have now started to look at uh, these tree shrine spaces through the lens of threshold. So these are locally called the ashwath kattes, where ashwatha is the Sanskrit word for the peepul tree. Ecologists call the peepul tree and the banyan tree as consider them to be keystone species, which means that they have very high biodiversity. They enable a lot of biodiversity. And hence, according to ecologists, these are very, very important in the ecosystem. And it's interesting to see how religion has given them this kind of importance. Locally, the platform around these people trees that are worshipped is called the katte, and hence ashwath katte is what the spaces are called. The origin of the katte lies in agrarian villages where a peepul tree or a boundary stone was considered as an embodiment of the deity. Here, what one sees is the Mawali neighborhood, which is right next to Lalbagh Gardens, which is one of the large public parks of the city. This is a neighborhood that started to see a lot of Mariamma shrines, where Mariamma was a plague goddess. And after the 1898 plague in Bangalore, these shrines started to come up. The white line that you see around a part of uh, the urban fabric is a line that marks a processional path, which is taken once in 3 years when what is called a village festival is celebrated here, where deities from four of these tree shrine spaces are taken in a procession along this path. Now, what is very, very interesting is that this was originally the boundary of the Mawali village. And while the urban fabric has now integrated these villages and enveloped them, this processional path, even today, tells us that this was the earlier boundary of the village. According to David Haberman, for Hindus, divinity assumes a variety of physical forms. However, the most accessible one is a neighborhood tree. While we find that people continue to worship trees, generate community spaces, making them into places of memory and cultural value, we also see simultaneously that administrators seem to imagine a city that meets global standards of urban form and infrastructure. And even today, one finds that we have kattes continuing to function here. As both religious spaces and social spaces. So you find different kinds of kattes, those that are within temple precincts, those that are adjacent to a katte or, sorry, a market, and so on. Coming to the research design, we have been doing a long-term ethnographic engagement. We've mapped about 100 kattes from 2015 to 2020. That has done a visual documentation and also conducted interviews at these kattes. And then from 2018 to 2019, when we received a research grant from Asim Premji University in Bangalore, we were able to do an in-depth analysis of 20 kattes. This is what the 100 katte mapping project looks like. It's completely online. It's available in the public domain today. You click on any of these icons and it takes you to a description of the katte, but also to a QR code which gives you a Google Map location so that any visitor to the city or any resident of the city can visit these kattes if they wish to understand them better. The idea behind the 20 katte in-depth study was to understand how social capital is generated. So the methods we used were spatial ethnography, participant observation, oral history interviews. I'd like to present here three case studies. The first one being Sishri Circle Katte, which is in the Chamrajpet neighborhood. Here one sees coexistence of the sacred and the everyday. Everyday being everyday practices such as the social and the cultural, which seem to intersect with the religious practices. In this plan, we have tried to lay out the different elements, the different spatial elements that are there in a typical ashwath katte or a tree shrine space. And what we see in this photograph is how on one side of the temple enclosure, you find policemen from the neighboring police station resting in the late afternoon. And then on the other part of the compound wall, you see flower vendors. There is a shift in social relationships, and this mapping shows interaction nodes, crossing of paths, pause points, and so on. Coming to the next case study, we have the Bisulu Mariamma Katte, which is at Dodamavali, which is what we looked at in the earlier map, close to Lalbagh Gardens. And here, this is a great example of a community managed commons. There is a temple trust, and the trustees are all local residents. This is also a very good example because you have here on one side the tree shrine, on the other the deity. But interestingly, you also have an open marketplace that runs every day. And this is what it looks like. There has been a process of territorialization. While the shrine, the katte, and the open market are known to have existed for 150 years, over the years, the community that has invested in this space has been adding a marriage hall and an open space and so on. And then we have the Siddhapa Mess Katte in the Sampangi Ramnagar neighborhood, a sketch plan of that, where you see the ashwath katte, but there is also this Siddhapa Mess, which is a very popular breakfast eatery of the neighborhood. And how people coming to the breakfast eatery pray at the katte, but also those who come to pray, they just sit there and they engage in conversation. So it becomes a place to pause and to meet others from the neighborhood. Now, coming to the idea of nature as threshold, how does one define it? Threshold can be seen as a place or moment of transition. Nature as threshold, on the other hand, how one tree and a simple platform can generate spatial transitions, shifts in meaning, shifts in social relationships. The idea of nature as threshold to understand tree shrine spaces as physical threshold, conceptual threshold, and social threshold. Coming to the idea of nature as physical threshold, a physical threshold would be one where one crosses from one domain to another, public to sacred, or movement to pause. And nature as physical threshold, therefore, would be how nature creates shade, invites pause, and forms a porous boundary between street and sanctuary. I would here like to read out an excerpt from one of our interviews with a flower vendor who says, I'm the first one to enter the temple precinct at 6 a.m. I place flowers on the idols. From 6:30 a.m. to 11:30 a.m., I stay here and sell my flowers. Coming to the next one, nature as conceptual threshold. This may be a perception shift, moving from the ordinary to the spiritual, from routine to reflection. Nature as conceptual threshold would be where everyday settings acquire additional layers of meaning or cultural value because of the presence of nature. And reading out from another excerpt, an interview with a local resident. I come here every Monday to pray. First, I offer water to the peepul tree. Then I apply kumkuma and pour milk on the serpent stones. I do pradakshina around the peepul tree and serpent stones. So these are everyday rituals that residents follow sometimes. Nature as social threshold, where it is a mediating platform with private and public, individual and collective intersecting. Nature as social threshold becomes then where people gather naturally under shade, where conversations start without being planned, where vendors, elders, children, and workers share the same space. Conflicts are negotiated, the tree shapes how social life unfolds. Reading out another excerpt, an interview with an auto rickshaw driver. Our auto stand is just beside the katte. My daily routine involves coming to the katte. If there is nothing to do and we have no passengers, we sit at the katte or in our autos and talk. Again, a great example of how this small public space becomes a very, very accessible space for different stakeholder groups. Now, to take a little bit of glimpse into what everyday life in Bangalore is like and how it intersects with sacred space. So most of these are kattes that are not necessarily within enclosures, and you find religion and ecology intersecting. You see the value of shaded space because these are peepul trees are large canopied trees. And these spaces begin to also function very well as inclusive gathering spaces where women feel very safe to come and sit, where elderly men come in the morning to read the newspaper, or they just gather together in the evenings to have a conversation. One may also want to look at the katte as hybrid infrastructure, which integrates ecological functions, shade, cooling, air filtering, cultural functions, rituals, meaning, identity, social functions, gathering, conversation, shared care, and economic functions such as informal livelihoods. There has been also rampant felling of trees because of new metro lines being constructed, and many of these ashwath kattes have been encroached upon or totally been demolished. So here one sees a photograph of a water tank next to one such katte, which was taken before the metro construction. After the metro construction, while the tree remains, the very beautiful stone water tank is now covered up in order to become a parking space for the local police station. Another example, before and after metro construction from another location. Nature as threshold, how does one interpret this for urban studies? So looking at the physical threshold, one might see nature here as an edge condition where the tree canopy creates a microclimatic boundary. It is neither indoor nor fully outdoor, it becomes an in-between spatial envelope. Nature may be a marker of transition, where in the past the peepul tree marked village limits. Today, the katte transforms this tree from landscape element into physical or spatial threshold. And conceptual threshold, where nature is a device for altered perception. Nature as cognitive pause point. Social threshold, where nature works as commons, where the katte functions as a commons, governed by communities through tacit agreements, where nature is also inclusive public space, where it is a place of microeconomies with flower vendors, tea vendors, fruit sellers, all surviving here because it becomes a possibility of a livelihood space. Coming to a close here, nature as threshold, therefore, can be seen as nature as resilience, where physical thresholds lead to microclimate resilience, where conceptual thresholds lead to behavioral resilience, and where social thresholds become community resilience examples. Finally, nature as threshold as a model for resilient public spaces. I would like to stop here. Thank you so much.